Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge.
After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort.
No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips, get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit gearhandle.com and use promo code H2O today.
Coming up on The Payoff, Chris Thompson is a serial entrepreneur, but most importantly, he is 4 years sober. And why it's so important that he's sober is because he's able to put all the good stuff out there that can help people connect in sobriety. And the main way he does it is through an app called Sober Sidekick. He's going to tell you what it's all about, but it's a creation that he came up with. 30 days sober, and it became a reality. Basically 30 days later, 60 days sober. And he has continued to work with the wind at his back, whether that wind is recovery or the success of this app. And he was an incredible person to talk to, just very thoughtful, very, very smart, smarter than me. So I tried to let him do most of the talking. All right. But you're going to really enjoy this. Chris Thompson is a special guy. But first, a special guy. I'm going to see this guy next week. Maybe he'll tell us about that album he's supposed to have, right? Kevin Souza.
Hey, Pete.
Yo, Chris, what's up, man?
I'm doing well.
I have a really good friend who I really trust, and his dad coached basketball at Cabrini forever. His name's Mike Zeke, and his dad is John Zeke. And a couple weeks ago, he sent me, he's like, you got it, because he's familiar with me. He knew me before I was sober. He knows me now. And he's like, you got to get in touch with this guy. And he sent me an article, I think from Fortune magazine, and a video that you had up on your LinkedIn. And I was like, wow. And so then I reached out, and Mike is one of those guys. He when I first got sober, it was like a slow integration into life, because I lived in a halfway house after rehab, and then I was living with another sober dude, living in Jersey City but working in New York City, and Mike would take me out to get to nice restaurants and stuff, because he lived in the city and worked there, and it felt really good. He's just a great guy, and so the fact that he thought a lot of you, I was like, let's go,
Yeah, I had a great conversation with him a couple weeks ago, and the Pennsylvania ties, kind of sparked it. But yeah, I agree. I was very impressed.
He's a thoughtful guy too, like yourself. Yeah,
intentional, very intentional.
Yes, very intentional. All right, I want to intentionally move now. You say that, and I love when you said this, people that are sober, the story is, they're the best comeback stories out there, and everybody loves a comeback story, and these are real stories. So I want to get into yours. I mean, I know I got some background on you. So where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Westchester. It's a suburb outside of Philadelphia, about 30 minutes outside the city. So yeah.
And where'd you go to high school?
A very small school called Westchester Christian.
Okay. I went to Carroll. And so Archbishop Carroll, and Radnor. So that's how I know Mike from we played basketball together at Carroll, and we play Westchester Henderson in football, but we never played. I'd never heard of Westchester Christian. So did you have a Christian upbringing?
Yeah. I grew up in the church. It was a Baptist church. So it was like church and school, it was all combined into this one very tight community.
Now, did you feel like a part of, or did the Christianity kind of maybe take you out of that as a young man? Are you thinking like, man, I don't know, am I boxed in or not?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a sensitive subject, but I'll answer it honestly. But for me, and what I've learned in recovery, what I've learned from being involved in groups like AA, I found empathy and human non-judgmental connection that has really turned my life around. And unfortunately I didn't see a lot of those things in the denomination that I grew up in. And kind of at our mission with supporting comeback stories, we want to be the platform that lifts people up when they're down, see broken people as just people who have yet to start their comeback story.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, a lot of fear-driven motivation out there that, in my opinion, doesn't take people too far. But at least for myself and in my own experience, it was the people who reminded me, that I'm capable of more, and that we're all capable of more. And, that grace, those were kind of the things that, shifted my perspective. And one thing I say about my own recovery journey all the time is I'm not a stronger person than I was. I'm not a better person than I was. I've just had a change in perspective. And, that's really, really all it takes. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah, totally. I'm a football coach here, Dave Aranda, the guy who coaches Baylor. I'm in Texas now, and he says, I think it was Miles Davis maybe said, jazz is simple, but simple ain't easy, and that's kind of like how I view recovery. I'm a 12-step guy too, an AA guy. Like it's simple, but you got to do the work. And I've never heard that, the change of perspective. When did you have your first experience with alcohol or drugs? I always say I think I was maybe a freshman in high school, and my first real experience, and it was my first spiritual experience. I tell people, I grew up Catholic, but that was when I was like, whoa,
Yeah. So I really want to answer that, but a thought came to mind that I wanted to touch on the conversation we were just having.
Yeah.
I believe it comes from Jim Rohn. But he said something like, having a good life is very simple. Being successful is very simple. And then someone asked him, why isn't everyone successful? Why isn't everyone happy? And he said, well, making the wrong decision is also easy. It's also very simple. And it's the consistency that makes the difference. And, that just really impacted me when I listened to it. And, I thought someone else's words might be wiser than mine in this situation.
Well, who said that?
Jim Rome.
Jim Rome, yeah, of course. I love Jim Rome. Yeah, the broadcaster.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So many nuggets there.
Yeah, totally. And I love that too, because it is easy to make the wrong decision. I have made the wrong decision in sobriety. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, as we say.
I
was talking to somebody.
In my opinion, we're all in recovery, whether it's from drugs or alcohol or, work or failure or trauma. Everyone's in recovery from something.
Yeah.
And, it's the consistent daily effort of letting go and, just being a little bit better, keeping the man in the mirror accountable, is what we're all doing.
So when did you have that first drink or that first drug that kind of altered your state of mind in a way that you were like, whoa, I'm into this?
Yeah. I was a late bloomer, in that my first drink came at 19. I was a freshman in college, and I really didn't have much. Maybe drank like half a drink, and I just noticed later, like, all this anxiety that I had was gone, and I'm like, where'd it go? And it was kind of like, it was kind of like a light bulb moment that, like, all it takes is a few sips, and kind of the anxieties, the fears, they don't seem so big anymore. So I was definitely a late bloomer, and in the beginning, I would say I was just a normal 19-year-old, a normal 20-year-old, and I in some ways was a little bit delusional, in that everyone told me that there were all these consequences to drinking, to alcohol. And the situation I was raised in, it was like, if you drink, you aren't saved, you aren't going to heaven, all these different things.
Yeah.
Which I didn't necessarily believe. So it was kind of an all or nothing approach, that I had kind of been raised with. So when it came to doing normal things at a young age, it was like, I don't really see what's so bad about this. Was kind of my initial experience.
And so you're an athlete in college too, right? You went to play basketball.
Yeah. Walked on.
Okay.
So yeah. The first school I went to, it was called Clearwater Christian College, in Florida. They've since shut down. I was only there my freshman year. Walked on there, and then transferred to Eastern University, and then walked on there also.
So was basketball, like, as you started to, I guess, move forward, right? And I don't know, you can tell us, like, or tell me how it sort of developed. What did basketball help you once you drank? Did you drink again your next opportunity? Were you like, wow, I gotta find this again? Or was it one of those things where it's a while because you're on track with school and basketball and you just drink again, randomly?
Yeah. I would say basketball definitely held me accountable, in those early days, in that, as at that point in life, all of my life goals were centered around basketball. So it really wasn't, an extreme temptation for me. It's like, oh, this is nice to have when I can have it. But, it wasn't worth, I made the mistake of being sick the first day of workouts, one year. And I never made that mistake again because it was brutal.
We'll get back to this conversation in a second, but right now, a word from our sponsors.
From the host of the popular podcast, The Only One in the Room, Stash by Laura Cathcart Robbins is a propulsive and vivid memoir about the journey to sobriety and self-love amidst addiction, privilege, racism, and self-sabotage. Best-selling author Holly Whitaker calls it an irresistibly delicious story, and MacArthur Foundation fellow and best-selling author Kiese Lehman says Stash is emotionally riveting. Buy Stash by Laura Cathcart Robbins now, wherever books are sold.
So when you're in college, you're playing basketball, socially, how are things like, are you developing social skills? Because I did not, and so my all of my relations, right, romantic, personal, I mean, a lot of times, more often than not, I was affiliated with football too, and that really kept me kept like, the bumpers on, like, in when you're bowling, that kind of sort of kept me on track. But I gotta say, there was a lot going on, You know, did you find yourself using alcohol to have relationships with other people?
Yeah, for sure. You know, so I guess we kind of touched on the fact that I went to a very small school. And it was basically the same 20 people, kindergarten through senior year. So going into college, I had a ton of social anxiety, you know, all the questions of, you know, what do people think of me? How socially awkward am I? You know, I don't know how to fit in, all these different social anxieties. So, you know, one of the things I realized early on in my drinking is that it really took the pressure off. And, you know, I felt, I don't feel like this is true anymore, but I felt at the time like I can be more myself. I can let go a little bit. So yeah, I definitely agree with that take when it comes to, you know, kind of the social anxiety, you know, that, you know, alcohol relieves, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, for me too, especially. And it was the biggest lie that I ever told myself. And I've told myself a lot of lies, but you know, this makes me better. And again, I believe that I had a reaction to it like that's different from most people, right? Probably not different from you, but different from most people. And that reaction just put me over the top. I mean, I was all in. Did you find yourself like, did you get through college like with basketball kind of keeping you on the tracks? How does that develop, and then what happens after college?
Yeah. So so when it came to basketball, by the time I was at Eastern, I actually, you know, the first year I transferred there, I didn't make the team, and then the second year I walked on. But it wasn't long after I walked on where I had my first startup idea, and I got all in really quickly. And you know, there was only a matter of time before, you know, I realized I couldn't manage practice, school, and the startup as I was looking to get it off the ground. So I actually quit before I played a single game at Eastern.
So, but then you start up this. You have a startup, and then how does that go?
Yeah. So in many ways, I got very, very lucky. For one, I had a co-founder who was very experienced leader in the startup world. And you know, we had an interesting idea. It was a pay it forward algorithm for undiscovered musicians, where essentially it was an app where undiscovered musicians could self-support each other, and give each other feedback in real time and kind of lift each other up. And you know, the way the app was designed, if you were an artist and you wanted feedback on your music, all you would have to do is give feedback to someone else, and the app would automatically play your song for someone else to listen to in real time. So it was an interesting idea, and we gained, and we gained a good amount of traction. We recruited a few thousand musicians before we even launched it, and then on launch day, we actually went viral on Twitter. Like we were in the trending box, and we had 40,000 downloads come in the first couple hours.
And how old are you when this is happening?
I was 21.
It's pretty heady thing, pretty heady experience, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, it was out of this world. And I mean, where it goes south is it was at that point in time while we're in the trending box on Twitter where we realized that our servers weren't set to auto scale, which meant that the app could not support the amount of people who were on it. And literally everyone, the app didn't work for anyone while we're in the trending box on Twitter. And, you know, we had outsourced the development to a team in India. We weren't able to get them on the phone in time, and it was it was a disaster. So, it's not often that you go viral on your first try.
Yeah.
And to fail at that level, it hurt my ego.
Oh yeah, but it's one of those things. Like, I bet that never happened again. It's a tough missed opportunity. Maybe. Did you ever recover this app from that?
Yeah. So that kind of ended up being the beginning of the end. And really looking back, the lesson learned for me was, you can't found a tech company and not have your tech in-house. And you can't launch a tech company without, at least a technical co-founder who actually can code and can actually build this. So it was at that point in time where I realized I probably picked the wrong major, and it's too late to change my major.
Which was? What was it?
It was economic development.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what that experience is what sparked my self-taught journey when it comes to coding, technology, and was consistent, was obsessive, until I built the confidence to be my own technical co-founder for the future.
And so, as this, you're developing now as a man, and this is one of those things where we talk about getting sober and doing esteemable things, and that can give you the confidence, right, that alcohol and drugs gave you. But still, while you're out there, career success, and teaching yourself how to do something like coding, like that can give you confidence as well. Are you kind of, are you now moving forward with a little bit more wind at your back? As you're learning and as you're starting to become, this serial entrepreneur, and where is drugs in all this, or alcohol?
Yeah. So we're talking about this point in time, right?
Yeah.
21.
Yeah.
22. So at this point in time, I dealt with a major life curveball. And, also at this point in time, my drinking was, problematic, but no problem.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, I wasn't drinking like a normal person. I could drink way more often than most of my friends. But no problems were really coming out of it at this point in time. And, so that's why I say it's problematic, but no problem.
Uh-huh.
And, the fact is that, it was just delayed problems, I dealt with a major life curveball, to which all my confidence in myself was shattered. All my trust in the people around me was shattered, and alcohol became my only solution.
What happened? Can you say what happened?
Yeah. So, I can only say so much about this because I don't want to, I don't want to mention any of the people involved.
Sure.
But long story short, I realized that I was not a dad when I thought I was a dad.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And, at that point in time, I was very invested. I was all in, so.
Yeah, that's soul crushing stuff. So,
yeah.
So you start to self-medicate, and where are you living at the time?
Yeah. So, I'm still in Pennsylvania. I'm entering my senior, or, I had taken a break from school, but I'm re-entering my senior year of college, and at Eastern University. So I'm living in Westchester / the Radnor Wayne area.
Oh, okay. Are you like drinking at those bars and stuff?
Yeah. Drinking at the bars, drinking in Westchester, drinking on the main line.
Yeah.
Going into Philly on the weekend.
So now are we drinking and doing drugs too now?
Not quite.
Okay.
Not quite.
So we have this event, which is, like you said, a major curveball. I've been through similar, relationship stuff. Just that all I did when anything like that happened to me was just pour alcohol and drugs on any feeling I had. Like, I did not want to feel pain. And so if I ever felt pain relationship wise, it was time to really ante up, or I should say level up. And it sounds like you did the same thing. Did you start to have major events happen related to alcohol, or stuff where you're like, okay, this is, even though I might be having success in this area of my life, I continue to move forward trying to create, but were you having trouble with alcohol?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got 2 DUIs in one summer. I was not being the version of myself that, my friends thought I was. I was not a good boyfriend.
Yeah.
I was not a good son. There was pretty much no area of my life to where, I was being the version of myself that I needed to be.
Yeah. And so now we're sort of starting to, because when you get the legal stuff going, and you're being dishonest, like that is, now we're starting to free fall a little bit. And let me ask you this, because I've done this and I know a lot of other alcoholics and addicts have done it. When this, curveball happens, right? And did you look at your drinking and whatever drug use at the time and point to, okay, well, it's because of that. I mean, if that happened to anybody, they would be like this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That you took the words out of my mouth. That was exactly what was going through my mind. It was straight victim mode. No one can tell me how to handle myself. You would be the same way if you went through the exact same circumstances, playing the comparison games, being resentful of anyone who could live a normal life. I was resentful towards normal people. Like, yeah. I would see someone holding a steady 9-to-5 job. It might not even be a good job. It, might just be like minimum wage. And I would be resentful at them for the fact that they could pay their bills and that they could have relationships.
Yeah. And this thing had just thrown you so far off track that you weren't capable of that. So I need this potion to help me out. Which is crazy. Cause it sounds like that's what you were thinking. And that's exactly how I would think. And sometimes still do today, right? In sobriety, you get into that victim mode. But so then what starts to happen? I mean, because now you're getting into pretty big trouble. Like, how do you end up getting sober? I know I heard you on some other podcasts and read some stuff. I mean, you talk about, and you don't brag about this, right? And we don't brag about it, but we also, it's like qualifying, right? You kind of want to connect with the person that's listening. Like you had situations where you're down and, buying drugs and a guy puts a knife to your throat. I mean, stuff where I was like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll kind of fast forward because, we're at 22 and I didn't get sober until 24.
We got time. Yeah.
Yeah. So going to jail, it was only 30 days and then 90 days house arrest. But going to jail for 30 days during the time where I should have been graduating, but I wasn't because I failed all my classes, was a really, really humbling experience. I say it's humbling, but I don't think I was humbled. truly at the time.
Yeah.
It was more a shameful experience. That's a more accurate way to put it. But it was a wake up call, and for me, the wake up call was I can't drink liquor anymore. It's got to be only beer, and I should never ever ever drive again if I have plans to drink, because I know myself. Even if I'm going out for one beer, that's not possible. I'm not leaving till I'm drunk. I'm not leaving till I'm blacked out. So like driving, just not an option. Also, my license was suspended. So yeah. So I thought I adapted, and I would only really drink liquor at parties, and it would be beer the rest of the time. And really I was just putting a Band-Aid, like
on a bullet
the
hole.
consequences. Yeah. Yeah, that's a better way.
Yeah, you put a Band-Aid on like a gunshot wound. It's like this is sooner or later. This thing is going to get ugly.
Yeah, and then started a new relationship, every once in a while I'd get drunk and say things I'd regret, and then I'd apologize for it. Wasn't doing great, but I had seen how bad I could do, and I was thinking, considering the circumstances, I'm not doing that bad.
Yeah.
But as it goes, it's progressive, and I became more and more dependent, and hiding cans, hiding bottles, and when it came to career wise, it was starting projects but never finishing,
which is the most unfulfilling, disappointing thing in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
You just bury that shit, and it's like, God, I can't believe I didn't get that done.
Yeah, and then finally, my girlfriend at the time, I had said things that I should not have said, and she figured me out, like, oh wait, he's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
It finally clicked for her, and I, from that point forward, I had no one to hold my shit together for. I had no one to pretend for, and it was that checks and balances leaving my life, and the self-pity and the victim mode, to where I was free falling, and I was binging, and I was ending up in the hospital, and the morning shakes, all these different things, and I'm only 23, 24, like, and completely isolated, and I was contemplating suicide, and I thought that the best case scenario for me was dying in my sleep. It was all self-pity, and it finally got to a point where it was just so bad, where it was I think it was August 1st, 2018, where it's like, either I get help or I'm killing myself. So maybe I get help. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
So I called a hotline, and they told me they could have me in treatment in California the next day.
Because you were living in California.
What was that?
You were living in California at the time, or no?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I was living in West Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, on Minor Street behind Barnaby's.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So they told me they could have me on a flight to California the next day. And I said yes. And, I was drunk enough to make the decision to say yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I went to treatment with a perspective that maybe they can fix me, and I'll give them a shot to fix me. looking back is the perspective that I had. So I went to treatment. They introduced us to AA. They introduced us to different things. And, I was thinking, I go here, I get 30 days, and then I'm set. This is behind me. I can move forward. So completed the treatment program. And my first day out of treatment, I get sent, I go to a sober living. And my first day out of treatment, I matched with this girl on Tinder.
Okay.
And
probably not the best course of action. One day out of rehab, but I when I tell you I get it, I get it. I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. My best thinking got me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I matched with a girl on Tinder. She asked me if I want to get high, and I didn't think about it for long. And I'm like, okay, I'm down. And just like that. And I only had $150 in my bank account at the time. So, go and we're in it. We're in LA. This is literally my first day of freedom in LA. We go get high, and then
what are we doing? Are we doing coke or?
Yeah, coke.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
are we drinking a little bit too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then as soon as the come down starts to hit, it's like I don't want to come down.
Yeah.
But I'm also out of money, so I'll just lie to this girl and tell her I have more money. I just can't get into my bank account right now, and tell the dealer that we'll come back in the morning. And so we get high again, or keep it going, and then the morning comes, and it's like I'm at the ATM pretending to have an issue. And she's onto it, and the dealer's her friend. So it's like, nope, we're going back, and you're gonna work this out with him. And it's just like shit. And I'm coming down, and I'm not really.
Oh, man.
I'm just trying to talk my way out of it. She takes my phone and goes up there, and then I'm just waiting. And then I go up there, and they're like, "So are you going to pay or not?" And then
how much money was it at this point?
It was only like $150 that I owed.
Okay.
So my phone gets taken, and there's a machete in my face, and you talk about shame. Like, they're telling me to text my friends and family members to send money.
Yeah.
And it's just talk about never thought I'd be in this situation.
Yeah.
And then I'm 36 hours out of treatment at this
point.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get my phone back. Machetes in my face.
Well, let me tell you, Chris Thompson, you qualify. Well, there's no, right. It's like, wow. Yeah, I can totally relate.
Yeah. So, not to drunk-a-log too much.
No, dude, that's, I asked, and I was curious, and I think it's important for people to hear stuff like this so they can connect, because they see you, doing what you're doing now, and you can, to somebody who doesn't get a chance to reach out and touch you, maybe through a podcast or reading something about you, they can feel unrelated. You can feel unrelatable, but you are very, especially to somebody looking for help. So go on.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get my phone back, because how else am I getting anywhere in LA without it? I never get it back. Girl drives away. I'm there just arguing with the dealer while the machete is still in my face. they talk about pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. That was a walk of shame for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Having to ask a random guy at an Arby's if I can call my mom so she can order me an Uber back to the sober living that I'm kicked out of for sure by now.
Yeah.
And realizing that she had already gotten text sent from my phone about the situation. It was just, the guilt and the shame. It was, and that guilt and shame. I'd like to say that was the last day I ever drank or used, but it wasn't. That guilt and shame. I just kept I just couldn't handle it, and they sent me back to a treatment center. I was in and out for the next 3 months. Going through this shuffle, to the point where, my last run, it was the week before Thanksgiving where the run started, and it only took me 24, 36 hours to get my phone and wallet stolen again.
Yeah.
So, five, and I'm just with literally nothing, roaming around LA in a poncho and hospital pants. And it's raining the night before Thanksgiving. I'm sleeping outside of a Ralph's. No matter which way I move, the rain is somehow still dripping on my forehead. And, I wake up Thanksgiving Day, 2018, and, you know how it is, the delirium tremens state, the paranoia, the seeing things, and it's, and seeing people walk in and out of Ralph for Thanksgiving, grabbing, turkey, sides, all these different things, and thinking, it's Thanksgiving Day, and this is where I am
Outside a supermarket. Are you asking people for money or anything?
I'm asking people if I can borrow their phone. I'm not asking for money straight up.
Okay.
I'm asking people if I can borrow their phone. I technically had money in my bank account. I was also asking people can you log into my PayPal and PayPal yourself?
Yeah.
And then, which sounds like a whole scam, but it
was actually there.
Yeah. Yeah. If you see a guy on the side of the road asking you that, you have the right to be skeptical. But yeah.
So what happens? So here we are. We're outside of Ralph's the day before Thanksgiving, and that's it.
Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, it's Thanksgiving at this time. So what do we do?
Yeah. So it's facing the reality that, this is where I'm at right now. I used to have dreams. I used to have a startup. I used to be an athlete, all these different things. I used to be an honor student. How did I get here? And, that's where the first honest thought that I'd had in a while popped into my mind, which I had heard in the rooms of AA, which is my best thinking got me here. And, I remembered a line from, it was either a podcast or a motivational video, where Will Smith was being interviewed, and he had said something along the lines of, there's a big difference between fault and responsibility, and most people don't recognize the difference. If your wife cheats on you, or you get in a car accident, or you lose your job, or this or that, it may not be your fault, but in his words, for damn sure, it's your responsibility. Only you can take responsibility for your life. And, I thought about that, and that's where, I began to separate, at least for me, when it comes to fault, that's associated with guilt and shame, but responsibility is associated with action.
Yeah.
So when you separate fault and responsibility, you're able to take action. So I asked myself, like, didn't have a lot of hope that day, but I asked myself, what if today's day one of my comeback story? And what if, what if I actually gave myself a shot? What if I gave my recovery a shot? At this point, it doesn't matter why I'm an alcoholic. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Could be genetic, could be trauma, could be whatever. But
we're here right now. I mean, this is so.
Yeah. So, borrowed a phone, called my mom, got an Uber to a hospital, got to the hospital. It turns out I had been to that hospital like a few days before. Didn't even remember it. That's where the hospital pants came from.
Uh-huh.
And then I had AMA. And, I told them, this and that, I need help. And, at that point in time, they were sick of me, and they said, this isn't a homeless shelter. Here's a number you can call. And as I was walking away, I heard the security guard say, I fucking hate this guy.
Oh my God.
I'm sick of this guy. And, it was humbling, because that's where I was at, that's who I was. And, I look at the person I was then, I can't blame anyone for having any types of feelings about, where I was at. But, I knew in the back of my head that this time was different. And, in my head, it's just like, that security guard might not know it, but I'm never going to have a drink again.
Yeah.
And, I told my mom, I'm sorry, and this is never going to happen again. And, it's, God willing, that is true. And, that has been true for the last almost 4 years now. But yeah. And,
so did you go back to rehab or did you go to just meetings, or how did you do it?
Yeah. So hospital didn't work out. So I got,
it sounds like it.
Yeah. So my mom got me one more Uber, back to one of the sober livings that I had gotten kicked out of in the last 3 months, where, I knew some people and, had respect, like,
some relationships there. Yeah.
And
it's not the first relapse or chronic relapse, whatever, that they've seen in the recovery community. If somebody comes back and they're willing to go to any lengths, people, you'll get an audience. I mean, that's what recovery is all about.
Yeah. So I walked into the sober living, dripping wet, shaking, and I just say, where's Bill, who was the manager of the house at the time. And then I say, I need help. And, him and, my best friend to this day, Aaron Evans, they just, surrounded me with love and, support and, and sat there and talked to me and smoked cigarettes, and until they had found a place for me to go, for help. And, got into a treatment center that night. I ended up being their first client ever.
That's a good story for them.
Yeah. If they still existed, it would be great.
Whatever works, right? Yeah.
And I was in it really was the best thing for me at the time because, it was just me, there was no one else there but me. And, I needed that experience of, having nothing to do but look in the mirror. And, the decision I made is, I don't know if I'm ever going to drink again, but before I take another drink, I'm going to give the 12 steps a thorough shot because that's what I've heard works for a lot of people. So a few days later, I was at a meeting. It was a Q&A meeting. I wrote on a note card, I need a sponsor so that I don't die. Those are my exact words.
Huh.
And it got put in a basket. So I literally left it 100% up to chance.
Like in California, for people who don't know, they do Q&A meetings, or they do them also around the country, and you put topics right in a basket, and they'll pull them out pretty much, right? Yeah, okay. In a 12-step meeting. This is awesome. So they pulled it out?
Yeah, they pulled it out, and at this point in time, I'm still in the same hospital pants, same poncho, shaking, and clearly the only newcomer in the room.
Yeah.
So they read the card. I need a sponsor so I don't die. And there's crickets because it's like, who wants to who wants to take on this project?
Yeah.
And this one guy, like, there was an awkward moment of silence, and one guy in the room, a room where most of the people in the room had time. One guy in the room raised his hand, and his name was Dan, and I was his first sponsee ever. He had just gotten a year, and he's still my sponsor to this day, and he recently got 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
I mean, talk about higher power moments, and higher power moments. And also my favorite book of all time is The Alchemist, which my favorite line from that book is, when you want something, the entire universe will help you conspire to have it. And that was true when it came to wanting alcohol and wanting that next drug,
and wanting
entire
sobriety.
universe conspired. But the same for sobriety. And So Dan took me on as his sponsee, and my top priority had nothing else to do was actually work these steps.
Yeah. Which it's the first thing even now that I'll put aside, right? It's like, I'm trying to put my career back or whatever. It's like, no, like this needs to be just like it is when you're coming around, like you were, Chris, like this needs to be the number one thing in my life. And it does for me today. I can't even give myself an out and say, especially when I first came in, but it really needs, if you want to get sober and give this a shot, you got to be willing to go to any lengths, and it's got to be the first thing you do. And sometimes we have the gift, dude, of unemployment and free time, and of desperation.
Yeah. And I mean, looking back, everything, like higher power, everything was conspiring, in my opinion, to help me and, work those steps, to the best of my ability. I know, the big light bulb moment for me was on step 4, combination of 4 and 5, but that realization that if everything is someone else's fault, there's nothing I can ever do to make my life better. But if I can see my role in any situation in life, then it instantly becomes a situation that can get better.
Yeah.
And realizing that alcohol was never my problem, it was my only solution. My solution for my inability to deal with resentments, my inability to deal with fears, and really, just seeing life expand and, that perspective shift, and I mean, I respect everyone's opinion when it comes to what helped them get sober or stay sober. But for me personally, I would definitely be one of the people who say that the 12 steps are the reason I'm here.
Yeah. And it sounds like it. I mean, just again, like listening to you before this podcast, talking to you now, you kind of AA and 12 steps, whatever. It's not a talk show. It's a walk show. And like, it's like, what are you going to do? And it's all about, I like when you say, and you can incorporate it into different ways of stopping drinking or getting sober, but it's all about action. I always say if Marshawn Lynch he'd be the best alcoholic ever, the best sober guy, because it's about that action, boss. I mean, it's like, what are you going to do? What are you doing today? Like, what are you doing now? And I so appreciate that. And I so appreciate your story. How did things start to shift for you, like career-wise? With a clear heart and a full mind, did you start to find that, okay, I am able to finish stuff now. I'm able to achieve, and not every idea maybe hits, but, you're a serial entrepreneur. I'm sure you're taking some big swings, right?
Yeah. So day 30, like first day out of rehab, I'm in a sober living, and it might have been a day or two after, because it was actually it was like Christmas Eve when this popped into my mind. But actually it was December 22nd. I know for sure now, because I got 30 days that day. And I'm sitting in an AA meeting, and I'm remembering that app for undiscovered musicians supporting each other that had epically failed due to our inability to execute. And it's like, well, I might be in a better position to execute now, and I have time. So what if I were to try this same exact concept, but for people in recovery? And the idea popped in my mind, and it stuck, and I had nothing else on my plate. So I immediately got to coding when I got home, and I was coding on a laptop that had a shattered screen, so I had to connect it to a monitor in order to even view anything that was on my screen, but started coding, and 30 days later, Apple approves a very ugly MVP of Sober Sidekick.
Sober Sidekick, which is, basically how you came on my radar, and incredible what you're doing. So they approve this. How the hell? I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, right? But you get it approved in 60 days or 30?
30. Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, and it speaks to like sobriety. And like God, I think we all have tools and skills that are God-given. I believe that makes us unique. Whatever it is you do and you might be good at, when you're sober and you can allow the universe or whatever, God, to work through you, we all have stuff to give, and here's all this you're about to give that was just totally, it was stopped. It was being stifled by all this alcohol and drugs. And worse, you're acting like a maniac, just like I was, right? In addiction. So you get this thing approved. I mean, is your mind blown or what?
I mean, it's exciting. I'd gotten apps approved by Apple in the past. But it's exciting from the sense that, like, this is literally what I'm I literally built the app for me.
Yeah.
In that, 60 days sober. And what was exciting day one, because, I could barely pay a $20 subscription for like the basic tools that I needed. And what was exciting for me was seeing random people, like this happened day one, like random people, not a lot, maybe 5 or 10 random people around the country find this app somehow, download it, and give each other support. Day one. And
I mean, that those dopamine hits will keep you moving forward regardless. Just that, I mean, then that's what recovery is all about for people that don't know and are listening to this. Like the feeling you get from people vibing or of anything that you can do to help them, or just from helping, that gives me the feeling that alcohol and drugs used to give me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100% is that positive dopamine. It's that earned dopamine. And as you kind of mentioned, at that point in time, I was starting to realize that, I have skills that can help others and benefit others. But also what was really cool is the platform in itself was designed to make people realize that their experience has value and that they have something to offer others. And the entire platform was built on the concept of paying it forward. And, the stat I'm most proud of when it comes to Sober Sidekick that is true to this day is no member has ever posted on the platform without being reached out to by another member of the community. And, it was that pay it forward, give to receive cycle that was the core, the basics of the platform from the beginning that, really differentiated it. And it was the reason why our early members were willing to forgive a horrible user experience, because it did one thing that no other app does, which is guarantee you that no matter what time of day that you reach out in this platform, someone else in the platform will reach back out to you. And yeah, it was special, especially early on.
Well, let me ask you this. How about now? I mean, this thing has really, really grown. It's helped a shitload of people. What are some of the responses you've gotten throughout the years, and even recently that just, I mean, I would imagine you get a lot because people in the sober community they're quick to lend help, and they're also quick to, we do show gratitude, hopefully, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you've heard some positive stuff.
Oh yeah. I've seen a few reviews that go along the lines of, this app had me in tears within minutes, which to me is just so impactful, because I know what that feeling is like the first time you're truly honest and vulnerable with someone, and the weight that gets lifted when they say, I get it, I've been there. It's reviews like that made my day. I saw a review come through today that literally says that, like, this app had me in tears within minutes. And then also today, I saw a written review that says, I don't know if I would have a year sober if it weren't for Sober Sidekick. And, especially early on when, there's no cash, no revenue, it was seeing those types of responses that was what I got paid in, was just seeing the impact that it was having. But one of the more impactful experiences is when I started to meet people in the real world who I didn't know from Adam, who told me, like, who knew who I was and told me the impact that Sober Sidekick had on them. On my desk at home, I have a badge or a patch from a DEA officer who gave it to me. I met him in California, and he was, years after I left the sober living, he was staying in the same sober living that I had stayed in. And he told me, I flew out here from Idaho or Iowa, I forget which one, to California to get help, and it's because of the support I received in Sober Sidekick.
Wow.
And I never would have thought help with my job, the way it is, you can't admit you have a problem. I never would have admitted I had a problem, but I was dying on the inside, and Sober Sidekick saved my life. Huh. And, it's those experiences that, have truly, this is what it's about. And, I'm sure you saw the article in Fortune about, VC pressure and revenue pressure and all these different things. But, the reason why we're able to confidently, stay true to our mission isn't because of any individual strength of us, our founders, or, character or anything like that. It's just because we've heard so many stories from our members, that we can't unhear it, and their stories are just so powerful, so inspirational, they're epic comeback stories to where we there's no way we can do anything that, sacrifices that, because it's just invaluable.
So for people, real quick, do you have like a 30-second, what exactly is, or a minute, Sober Sidekick?
Yeah. So when you look at the substance abuse space, we see the fact that we're spending $43 billion a year on treatment that is seeing success rates of 3 to 5%. Meanwhile, we've seen the success that AA and programs like that have had by engaging people in the real world and meeting people where they're at. So Sober Sidekick, it's an app in the App Store, but our unique value proposition is what we call our empathy algorithm, and it's an algorithm that guarantees that there is no scenario of which a member ever writes a post and doesn't immediately receive support from another member of the platform. And we've gamified empathy to the point where for every member who posts, 6.2 people will respond in minutes, if not seconds. So this means at 2 a.m. when, you're isolated, when you just got in a fight with your significant other and the old ideas are coming up, there's an option to write a post anonymously at 2 a.m. and immediately have people reaching out to you with support, with love, with grace, with empathy. And, our thesis is the opposite of addiction is connection. And, we aren't the first to say that, but, we're proving it in real time. And, for my own self personally, I know the more isolated I am, the closer I am to another drink.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah. For us, our enemy is not alcohol, it's not Coke, it's not heroin, it's isolation.
100%.
And, yeah. And that's what we're fighting against. That's what we're optimizing against. And, and we see it in real time. The more a member engages with their peers, literally it's they are 300% more likely to remain sober by the 5th time they've engaged with their peers within the platform. And it's stuff like this that, our health industry just is not focused on. All the monetization is short-term care.
Well,
with,
yes.
Minimal outcomes.
Go ahead. When I saw the, go ahead. Yep, but I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah. So
finish your thought. Were you going to say yet? You said it was all about monetization.
Yeah, monetization of short-term outcomes, and unfortunately, the incentives are more for repeat treatment goers, such as myself. Those 3 months in LA. Those are incentivized more than long-term success, which is why, we see the 3 to 5% success rates.
Yeah.
And, we see the human trafficking, we see the body brokering, all these different things that come out of the incentives being in the wrong place. So for us as a company, we're here to realign the incentives towards the long-term outcomes. And, the only way to know what long-term outcomes look like is to create long-term engagement. And, for us, we've seen that nothing leads to more lasting engagement they're not a member's connection to Sober Sidekick, but, you know, their connection to each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what we're here to feel, is connections to each other.
Dude, it's unbelievable. And I was thinking today, it's great that, you know, you're younger than me, and the folks that are coming up with all this know-how and all these skills you're talking about are able to bring stuff like this to the table, because it's super important. And I think it taps into a whole nother vein as far as this thing is concerned. A lot of people don't want to come out. Look, I would suggest anybody walk into a meeting, right? But like, it ain't happening all the time. Yeah. And there's a place where you can go where you can dip your toe in the water. And I love that. I love that about Sober Sidekick and what you're doing. Before I let you go, you got anything else? Any other gems to drop on us?
Yeah. I guess, you know, I'm kind of spitballing here, but, you know, I guess to anyone who's on this recovery journey, you know, I guess, you know, there's one story that I found to be impactful, is, you know, the day that you want to quit. You know, and I think for me personally, you know, there was a day I was almost 6 months sober, and, you know, I had done a pitch. It went horrible. I was in San Francisco. I missed the check-in for my hotel. I had like no money to go get another hotel. And I walked into a store and bought a bottle. And, you know, at that point in time, I was, you know, ready to quit. I had bought the bottle. And by the time I had bought the bottle, I thought, you know, this is over. You know, I'm done. It's the end of the world. And, you know, I unscrewed the cap, tried to lift the bottle to my lips, but every time I got it close, I just couldn't, and I set it back down. And, you know, I realized that, you know, this is a defining moment, and, you know, it doesn't have to end this way. You know, this is a bad moment, but it doesn't have to be a bad day. And one of the things my sponsor had told me is there's only two types of days in recovery: good days and great days. You know, the good days is when everything goes your way and you stay sober. And the great days is when nothing goes your way and you stay sober.
Yeah.
And, you know, that stuck with me. And, you know, I look back at that point in time, and it's just like, I can't imagine, you know, how different life would be had I took that drink at 6 months.
And for all the people you've positively impacted.
Yeah. I mean, I truly can't take credit for that. You know, I mean, when it comes to my recovery, all I did was get out of my own way. You know, and yeah, I mean, but, you know, looking back in all the conversations we've had with our members since, and, you know, seeing the experience, strength, and hope from their stories, you know, we're just here for one more day, you know, and that's all we have. And, you know, to anyone who might hear this podcast and, you know, relate or, you know, need a voice to talk to or need a voice to listen, I'd be glad to be that person. You know, so
yeah, we'll put all that. We'll put your contact and stuff in the show notes. I mean, not your phone number, but, you know, I'll put your Instagram and stuff out there. Dude, this has been great. I can't thank you enough. So you know, it's one of those things. I'm ready. I feel, you know, like I'm levitating, which is always a good sign. So I love talking to other alcoholics and feeling that connection that you talk about. It's just, you know, it's what drives me today.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and, you know, anything when it comes to, you know, confronting the stigma and, you know, embracing empathy and embracing the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, we need more people like you in this world that are, you know, boldly and courageously sharing these stories and bringing them to light, you know, because, you know, people don't die. People die because they think they're alone. when it comes to this disease. And, you know, I can't thank you enough for having me and all the work you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, and right back at you. I'll be in touch, man. Thank you. I appreciate you, Chris.
Yeah, likewise.
All right,
Likewise.
buddy.
Thanks so much.
You got it. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.
Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.